Vivian is 25 years old, standing at a gate at Idlewild Airport in 1963. Her hat is perfectly pinned. Her gloves are white and smooth. She checks her compact mirror once, twice, and clicks it shut. Every detail on her body meets a written standard. But there is a letter folded in her handbag. Court papers. She needed them to get this job. By number 1, you will understand exactly what the smile, the hat, and that letter were each quietly doing. Number 12. The uniform that left nothing unofficial. The uniform had a list: hat, gloves, heels, pressed skirt, every piece regulated before she touched a boarding door. Airlines in the early 1960s did not leave appearance to judgment. United Airlines' 1968 requirements specified hair no longer than shoulder length, no colored hair, unblemished complexion, and white gloves on hand at all times. American Airlines ran a 6-week stewardess college. New hires were trained on standardizing not just their duties but their makeup and their hair. PSA sent recruits directly to salons after training. The stiff rustle of a pressed skirt, the slight resistance of gloves pulled tight, the click of a hat pin going in. These were not personal choices. They were job conditions worn on the body. Any piece could be checked before departure, and if a piece failed, she could be sent home without pay. Number 11. The girdle check. The uniform covered the outside. The next rule went underneath. Stewardesses were required to wear fitted girdles beneath their uniforms. This was not a suggestion. It was verified before the gate opened. Supervisors would press a thumb against the small of a back to confirm the garment. One former Continental Airlines hostess described it plainly. Supervisors checked total appearance at all times, and any hostess who did not meet standards could be sent home without pay, not reprimanded, not warned, sent home. The girdle was not personal. It was enforcement. A supervisor's thumb decided whether the workday had started. The starched fabric, the sound of heels on a terminal floor, the brief pause before the gate opened, all of it inside a rule no passenger ever saw. Number 10. The scale before the gate. Before shifts, stewardesses at many airlines stepped onto a standard medical scale, shoes off, but clothes on. United's 1968 requirement set the weight ceiling at 135 pounds. Braniff International published a formal weight chart for female flight attendants. At some carriers, pay could be docked for being a single pound over the limit. The scale was not a health measure, it was a performance standard. It had no interest in how well she handled turbulence or how calmly she managed a frightened passenger. It had no interest in how well she handled turbulence. The number decided whether the paycheck was whole. The next rule was harder to measure. Number 9. The complexion filter. She sat across from a chief hostess. She had passed every posted requirement. Her file showed it. Patricia Banks Edmiston received a B+ rating in 1956. Then a director overrode it. She was told the company didn't hire black women. Supervisors were instructed to screen out applicants based on nose shape, lip shape, and hair texture, framed as beauty but functioning as a racial filter. By 1965, there were approximately 50 black stewardesses in a U.S. workforce of more than 15,000. The standard was called beauty. The consequence was a door that didn't open. Next, we look at the secret life of Vivian's letter. Number 7. The rule at the dinner party. At the Petersons the week before, Carol's husband said something incorrect about the new development going up east of town. Carol knew the details. She had read the piece in the paper herself. She refilled the water glasses. Multiple marriage guides of the 1950s warned against contradicting a husband in public, even on factual matters. Disagreement was to be saved for behind closed doors, if expressed at all. Some guides went further. If a wife had to offer a different view, she should find a way to make him feel he'd arrived at it himself. The advice columns treated a wife who corrected her husband in front of others as a wife who was being domineering, who was damaging the marriage. The etiquette was not about politeness. It was about who was allowed to be right in the room. The more Carol knew, the more carefully she managed what she let herself show. Until now, every rule on this list was something Carol could handle herself: a pressed dress, a turned-off dryer, a held-back opinion. The next rules didn't wait for her at the mirror. They were waiting for her in waiting rooms, bank windows, and advice columns with circulation numbers in the millions. Number 6. The Marriage Counselor's Rule. In 1957, an organization called Divorcees Anonymous existed for the purpose of helping women avoid divorce. It was founded by an attorney named Samuel M. Starr. Scholar Kristen Salello documented its work in Making Marriage Work. When a woman came to Divorcees Anonymous after discovering her husband was cheating, the organization's solution was to take her to a beauty salon, sew her new clothes, and work on her mind and her heart as well as her appearance. When she was deemed improved, they arranged a meeting between her and her husband. Clifford Adams, in his Ladies' Home Journal column, advised wives whose husbands were physically violent that avoiding arguments, indulging their husbands' whims, and helping them relax would foster harmony and make them happy wives. The stiff chair, the fluorescent light, the scratch of a pen on a notepad, the question that didn't sound like a question. What do you think you might have done to contribute to this? These were not fringe opinions. They were published by institutions with offices, credentials, and readership in the millions. Number 5. The name on the card. The credit card Carol uses to pay the household bills is addressed to Mrs. Richard Carroll. Before the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was signed on the 28th of October 1974, married women could not obtain credit cards in their own names. The card came as Mrs. Husband's name. The credit history, however carefully she managed the account, however faithfully she paid the balance accrued only to him, if he died, if she divorced. Her financial record disappeared. As one woman recounted in an oral history documented by the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum, she applied for a card in the early 1970s, was turned down, and was told that if her husband wished to apply, he could. She earned more than he did. The fluorescent light above the bank counter. The card sliding across the window. The name on the front that was and was not hers. She did the work. The record said otherwise. Number 4. The baby letter. When Carol and Richard apply for a larger house in 1961, the bank has a question. In some banks during the late 1960s and into the early 1970s, if a couple wanted the wife's income counted in a mortgage application, they were required to produce what was informally called a baby letter, a signed statement from her doctor confirming she had had a hysterectomy or was using birth control and would not become pregnant. One woman, whose letter was later compiled in archives by the National Organization for Women, wrote that a real estate agent required written proof of birth control before he would show her homes. The bank's reasoning? If she became pregnant, she might leave the workforce. Her income would disappear. Until 1978, it was legal to fire a woman for being pregnant. The dry sound of a form being pushed across a desk. The pen. The sealed envelope that travels from her doctor's office to a loan officer's filing cabinet. The house required a letter about her body. Number 3. The divorce that was her fault. Carol's friend Margaret left her husband in 1958. The marriage was not good. She left anyway. People stopped including her in things. The dinner invitation didn't come. The bridge table had a different arrangement. When Margaret's name came up in conversation, there was a particular silence, not hostile, just pointed. The question underneath every gathering was the same unspoken one. What did she do wrong? Divorce in the 1950s was widely understood as a failure, and the failure was most legibly hers. Marriage counselors like Paul Popenoe, who founded the American Institute of Family Relations and appeared regularly in national magazines, trained counselors to ask wives what they had done to make their husbands so unhappy, even in cases involving violence or infidelity. Every rule before this one had been partly aimed at this outcome. The dress, the smile, the quiet house, the refilled water glass, the unsaid opinion, the system had a clear exit. The exit cost everything. The empty chair at the bridge table. The invitation that didn't come. Number 2. Morale is woman's business. The Reverend Alfred Henry Tyrer wrote in Sex Satisfaction and Happy Marriage in 1951 that no single habit destroyed the happiness of homes more frequently than a wife asking for things which he called nagging. Dorothy Carnegie published How to Help Your Husband Get Ahead in 1953, making the case that a wife was responsible for her husband's professional success. Dr. William Josephus Robinson advised wives to wear pink undergarments to reduce the risk of a husband straying. Clifford Adams, in Ladies' Home Journal, gave the architecture its name. Your most important job is to build up and maintain his ego. Morale is woman's business. Carol knows this rule better than any other. She never read it in a book. She watched her mother. The oven timer goes off. She pulls on the oven mitts. She calls to the front room. The look on her face, the warmth in the voice, nobody required it exactly that way. But everybody expected it. The lipstick was maintenance. The smile was labor. The cheerfulness was a job with no title, no description, and no pay. Number 1. The condition. Here is the thing about all 12 rules. Carol could do everything right. She could keep the house, time the dinner, quiet the dryer, hold her tongue at the Petersons, smile at the right moment, wear the right clothes, see the right counselor if the marriage wobbled. She could manage the credit account faithfully for 20 years. And still, no credit history in her own name, no individual claim to the mortgage without his signature, no legal protection if the pregnancy she planned privately became a reason to let her go. No institutional support if the marriage failed. Only professional guidance on how to try harder. And if she left, her reputation bore the weight of it. Every rule on this list, the dress, the noise, the smile, the silence at dinner, the counselor's question, the bank form, the baby letter pointed in the same direction. A woman's financial future, her housing, her social standing, her professional protection, and her personal safety were conditional. Not on what she did, on whether her husband stayed. The rules were how she maintained the arrangement that made her future possible. Not as love, as insurance. Carol looks at the mirror at 5:35. She checks the lipstick. She hears the car in the driveway. She is not thinking about any of these rules. She doesn't have to. They have become the texture of her days. Carol is still at the counter when the oven timer goes off. She wipes her hands on the house dress. The lipstick tube is where she left it, by the hand mirror propped against the sugar bowl. Some of the rules she lived inside were printed in magazines. Most of them were not. The unwritten ones were often stronger because nobody ever had to defend them. If you knew a woman who kept a rule like this, a name on a card that wasn't hers, a smile she had ready at the door, leave her story below, subscribe, and follow us to the next hidden code.